You have your Bible, Proverbs 6, and I'm not going to be there for a wee bit. Whoa! Get that horse and pull it in, brother. I won't even ask where you came up with that shirt. I'm amazed. All right. I've seen them all, but you just beat it right there, brother. It's a shame. I ought to have the camera focused on you, Roy. Talk about school spirit. Yes, we do. All right. You're in Proverbs 6 tonight. I want to walk you through the study here, and it should be on your outline. You can fill in a lot of this. Some of it, though, we're going to look at by way of introduction. We were just chatting back and forth a little bit at the beginning with Dave about debt and surety, and I invite you to look at your outline there, and we're going to look for the next few moments at the folly of becoming a surety for another's debt. And the surety, I think the definition is on there. It is that of assuming legal responsibility for another's debt or guaranteeing another's debt. Now, I want to walk you through some practical law side things. When you're reading Proverbs, and we're pulling out these verses that study by, understand that they do have a legal basis for the Proverbs. There's a reason that Solomon is teaching this to his son. It's not just a general knowledge, it's a biblical knowledge. And I wanted to walk you through that. And so on your outline, I'm not sure what's there and what's not there, but God's people were not to charge one another interest for personal loans. Now, I will admit, there's a debate. Was it a matter of just charging interest, or was it charging too much interest? You know, I think credit card interest rates now are what? Are they like 18, 20%? Would you classify that as usury? I think we would, right? All right, let me walk you through this, because here is the legal basis for what we're going to read in Proverbs 6, verses 1 through 5. Exodus 22 and verse 25. If thou lend money to any of my people that is poor by thee, thou shalt not be to him as a usurer or a creditor, neither shalt thou lay upon him usury. In other words, don't charge someone who is poor, charge them interest. Now, again, there's a debate. Is it how much interest? I can remember in Michigan when Sheila and I first got married, 1979, 1980, and interest rates for home loans, I think, was 14% or something outrageous like that. Same thing was true for automobile loans, 14%. So the average person who was poor, middle class, we were pushed out. Now, I do want to say for anybody listening, that was the end of the Jimmy Carter era and the beginning of the Reagan era. Reagan, fortunately, in the first 4 years, was able to pull it under and pull it down. All right, moving on. Here's another Deuteronomy again. There's a law basis for what Solomon is going to teach. Deuteronomy 23, verse 19, thou shalt not lend upon usury to thy brother. But verse 20, unto a stranger thou mayest lend upon usury. All right, who is the stranger? Someone who is non-Hebrew, right? So these would be outside the 12 tribes, if you would. Some would argue that it would be outside the family tribe itself. So I'll leave that up to you to research. Give you another. Leviticus 25, 35 through 37. And if thy brother be waxen poor and fallen in decay with thee, that is, he's physically unable to support himself, then thou shalt relieve him, yea, though he be a stranger or a sojourner, that he may live with thee. Now let's pause there. Our culture historically has a compassion for people who are hurt or injured. One of the if there's anything good that can be said about the unions, and that probably would have to go back into the early 1900s to say it, but the one thing that the unions did was bring in at least some protections for the workers. There was a time that you could be injured on a job, and that's just too bad. Even though the company itself would be culpable for your injury, but you were at that point put out, and you were dependent upon the charity of your family. You're dependent on the charity of your neighbors. But going back to this, is in the law, and people don't understand this when they're so anti-Old Testament law, there is within the law a compassion, a charity, a caring, an evidence of reflecting God's love for others. Remember, the greatest commandment, love the Lord, love thy neighbor. Well, that was the interaction of what the law was about. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Why? Because when you do, you have sinned against your neighbor. We could go through that, but I won't get to where I need to be tonight. Here's another, Leviticus 25:36. Take thou no usury of him. So someone that is down and out, somebody who's hurt, someone who is struggling to put food on the table, those are the ones that we should help. We should have charity in the things that we do in our relationship. Now, I want to walk you to another. I've had you over in Nehemiah 5. You can look at it if you like to. I'm going to just simply tell you the story. Nehemiah chapter 5, they're working on the wall, right? From all over the various cities, all over around Judah, all the men are there, and they're working at building the wall of Jerusalem. In the process of doing that, they're not able to plant their crops. Well, there were wealthy people in Jerusalem who began taking advantage of the families working on the wall. And so as a result of that, they began to loan them money and means to purchase food. But in the process of doing that, when the loans came due, the Jewish people weren't able to repay the loans. And in that culture, what they began doing was then selling their children. And so their sons and their daughters would become part of a servant-slave relationship. And that is what Nehemiah in chapter 5, he begins to condemn with a great vehemence against the wealthy people. They had taken advantage of God's people. The result of that was not only could they no longer charge interest, but they had to give up the right to having the debt repaid. They had disobeyed God. They had violated the law, and the only thing that would set it right was the release of all the indebtedness entirely. Now that's the story. Let's go. Let's go to Proverbs. You have it there, and it should be the verses should be laid out there. Give you one thought that goes on the outline. A borrower can become a slave to a lender. All right. I'm not going to get into the discussion if all debt is bad, because many of us would not be able to drive home tonight. We wouldn't have a roof over our heads. We live in a different culture today. But the fact is this: as long as you are obligated to a debt, you are a slave or a servant to those who lend. Agree? All right, let's look at the verses. Here we go. Solomon's caution, and we're going to walk this through. Some of you might agree or disagree, but I think you're going to at least agree with the Scriptures. Let me read it. Proverbs 6 and verse 1. My son, if thou be surety, securing somebody else's debt, for thy friend, if thou hast stricken thy hand with a stranger, someone who is not your family, not your friend, thou art snared with the words of thy mouth, thou art taken with the words of thy mouth. Let me unfold it for you. Here we go. Number one, I think it's on your outline, right? It's risky business to become a surety for a friend or family members. And I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying it's risky business. Why is it risky business? Risky person, because they may what? They may default, right? And if they default on their debt, who's going to have to pay for it? You're going to have to pay for it. And so go back to the verse here. Verse 2, thou art snared with the words of thy mouth. Be careful how fast you are to agree to a partnership. When I was growing up, I would say my grandfather or my dad, they didn't need a contract. All they needed to do was shake hands. It was binding. You know why it was binding? Because it's one man's word and character and the other man's word and character. Well, brethren And sisters, times have changed, even for families. Here's another thought then. Number 2, it is folly to become surety for a stranger. Now, a stranger really, by definition, is someone would be a non-believer, an unbeliever. Here's a couple of verses then. 2 Corinthians 6:14, be ye not unequally yoked together with unbelievers. I had a wealthy man in Michigan I knew. He went into a partnership with an unsaved man. The wealthy man was a wealthy man no mo. Because the unsaved guy didn't have the scruples, didn't have the principles, and he ended up taking the company down and taking the money with him. Be careful. Can two walk together except they be agreed? Don't go into partnership with someone who is lost. They live by a different principle. They have a different philosophy. They have a different Lord. Here, another. It is a snare, a trap used by hunters, that is, a snare, to become surety for another's debt. Let me walk you through that. Verse 2. Thou art snared with the words of thy mouth. Thou art taken with the words of thy mouth. In other words, your tongue can get you in big trouble. Be careful what you agree to. Here's something I would say to the men in the room. Never go into a big expenditure. Now, I don't know how big might be in your household. It might be $10. I don't know. But there's a limit of what you should spend without the wife's blessing. Would you agree with that? You know why? Because she's probably going to have greater insight than you are into someone's character. Now, I am the first to admit I have loaned money before. I'm the first one also to admit I've never been repaid, okay? But I loaned it knowing that I might not get it back. I accepted that going in. Would I do it again? Not with that individual, I won't. Learn my lesson. And I don't like it when my wife says, I told you so. All right? So be careful. That's how Sheila and I have operated over the years. I'm going to move on because of the time tonight. Here's another then. Solomon's counsel, get released from your obligation as soon as possible. Let's say you're in partnership. You made an agreement. You shook hands. Man, before you go to bed, get out of it, all right? Whatever it takes. Let's walk it through. What does it take? Do not rest until you're free from another's debt. Proverbs 6, verse 3. Do this now. Now, he's still talking about the debt, the surety. You know, you've opened your big mouth. You shook hands. You went home, and your wife said, what in the world have you done? Are you crazy? Verse 3. Do this now, my son. Deliver thyself when thou art come into the hand of the power of the obligation of thy friend. Go, humble thyself. Make sure thy friend. I would suggest to you that, let's say $1,000. All right, you underwrote $1,000. If you can agree to $900, walk away with a $100 loss. It's better losing $100 than it is losing $500. You understand what I'm saying in this? You have to be careful. Now, the pastor that's just the unsaved, right? It's just, no, it's in the church too. Here's what happens. When you become a surety or in partnership with another believer, you're pretty well putting your friendship at risk. You just are. You're putting yourself in a position that either they're going to go to another church, you're going to go to another. Something's going to happen. Now, are you saying all partnerships are wrong? No. I'm just saying you do not enter into them unadvisedly. You enter into it very carefully and never with an unbeliever. I know a lot of you would have something to say on that, but I'm not going to let you because people will leave here wondering who you're talking about. And so we're going to let it go at that, okay? There's some things I've learned in life that you need to learn now, and I'm not going to let you do that. All right, moving on. Here's another thought. Be intolerant of debt. Do not sleep or slumber until you're free from obligation. Proverbs 6 and verse 4. Give not sleep to thine eyes, nor slumber to thine eyelids. Now, again, we're talking about being a surety for somebody else's debt. I praise the Lord. Over the years, Dad helped us a little bit. I think he helped us with $5,000 to put down towards our first house. Wasn't under obligation. We did repay it. But, I went into it knowing this is my obligation. And I praise God that I've been able to, over the years, be responsible in that. Look at verse 5. Verse 5 is interesting. It talks about the hunter and the hunted. Deliver thyself as a roe from the hand of the hunter, and as a bird from the hand of the fowler. Now, how fast does a roe or a gazelle, how fast does a gazelle flee from a hunter? A picture is worth 1,000 words. As fast as you can run, right? I had some pretty neat ones. I saw two gazelles and one. This is not a cheetah, is it? Is it a cheetah? Well, the two gazelles had the cheetah in between them, and they were bigger. They had long horns. That cheetah lost the fight. It was not pretty. So on that hand, the hunter became the hunted. But just a good thought. So the application is this. When it comes to being a surety for somebody else's debt, run for your life. Any thoughts now, without bringing up any illustrations from your own personal life? Yeah. Is this about Roy? Oh, okay. Okay. Oh, yeah. 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 As believers, if we live by the Word, we live to a different standard. A different standard. Let me take you to the Proverbs 11:15. Is that on your outline? Okay. Notice that again. It's just the same thought. He that is surety for a stranger shall smart. Now, that doesn't mean you are smart. It means it's going to hurt, okay, for it. And he that hateth suretyship is sure or confident. Let me take you to the sluggard. There he is. I thought about getting one with a recliner, but I thought some of you might take it very personal, and so I decided not, okay? Let me walk you through this. I love the word sluggard and slothful. I would love to see those enter back into the American vernacular again, because just the word sluggard, you get that mental image of somebody like this, a couch potato. Let me walk you through it. Here's the sluggard. Go to the ant, thou sluggard. Consider her ways and be wise. The sluggard can learn from the example of the ant. What are some things you can learn from an ant? Hard work. How many of you have ever had ants in your house? All right. Would you say they're busy? Yes. And when you kill one, 10 others are coming right behind it, right? They're constant. I mean, you're wondering, what in the world? I mean, where are they coming from? I don't know. They're going so fast. And my wife says, because you got to call Best Pets. You got to do it now. We got ants. We got ants, I call Best Pets. We've got ants, but they're busy. Here's some thoughts that go with that, and it continues. The first is the ant is industrious. The ant is industrious. And then another I'd like to go ahead and move on to verses 7 and 8. The ant is self-motivated, disciplined worker. Proverbs 6, verse 7, which, speaking about the ant having no guide, overseer, or ruler. Now, I know bees, right? Any of you ever raised bees? Growing up, my granddad had bees. And there is a hierarchy in the world of bees. I'm not going to take time for it because can't finish with the ant. But there is a hierarchy. But with the ants, I found it so interesting. They don't have a captain, they don't have a manager, and they don't have a ruler. No one's in authority. But when you talk about a beehive, you're talking about the queen bee, right? And then you've got the worker bees, and you've got all of these bees. What does an ant have? Nothing. Look at verse 8. Regarding the ant, provideth her meat in the summer, gathereth her food in the harvest. Now, we don't have that problem in Florida. We have ants year-round, right? I don't know if there's different breeds of ants in the south and versus the ants up north. I have no idea. I know the fire ants, I hate them. I never had found fire ants until I moved to Florida, and oh my first awakening moment. So the ant is always busy. Come in, Ruth. All right, let me move you on. Here's another. Warning to the devastation of laziness. I like this. You can purchase this guy at the Museum of Toys. He comes with a hoodie jacket, Lay's potato chips, Mountain Dew. What is that other thing? Candy? It must be candy. Oh, an air freshener. He'll probably need that. All right. The devastation of laziness. Allow me to walk you through it. All right. Here are some thoughts then. Proverbs 6 and verse 9. Does this look like any of you at home? Don't answer that. How long wilt thou sleep, O sluggard? When wilt thou arise out of thy sleep? You ever wonder what the people who are rioting, and it's like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning, you ever wonder what they're doing the next morning at, say, 7 and 8 o'clock when you're going to work? They're doing this. They're doing this. Sure. I did. Hey, my wife would tell you, I'm up before she ever sees the dawn of the morning. How long wilt thou, O sluggard, when wilt thou arise out of thy sleep? Here's another. Laziness leads to a tragedy. I wanted to go back there. I need to look at it. Notice with the sluggard, and I wanted to make this as a point to you, the questions about his laziness. How long are you going to sleep? How long wilt thou arise out of thy sleep? It's interesting. It's a provoking question, but not necessarily a confrontational question. Now look at the next part. Here's where laziness leads to a tragic end. Proverbs 6, 10, and 11. Yet a little sleep, a little slumber, a little fold into the hands of sleep. So shall thy poverty come as one that travaileth. That is, poverty is slowly and surely coming. It's kind of like the march of an enemy. That is the way poverty comes. You know, you're sleeping, you're lazy, you're sluggard. Poverty is marching. Poverty is coming. Thy want as an armed man, or a man that's bearing a shield. Proverbs 20, verse 4. Just another to add to it. The sluggard will not plow by reason of the cold, therefore shall he beg and harvest and have nothing. If you've ever lived on a farm, or you lived on a bigger commercial farm, one of the things you don't do is you don't sleep in. There's no such thing as sleeping in, right? I can remember going out to slop the hogs, and it's dark. I had a little tiny lamp, a little lantern like that, back before, flashlights and all that. We had flashlights, but I had my little lamp. But to go out to the hog pen, I mean, it's dark. You're going across the field to the hog pen, and you do what you do because you got to do it. It's just part of the life. A farmer harvests his field, and then in the fall, the freeze is coming, and he's plowing, and he's preparing it for what? He's preparing it for the next planting, which will come in the early springtime. So the farmer's work, it's never done. You can't be a sluggard and be a farmer, is my point. Why? Because you'll starve if you don't get up. Yeah? Burning day. There you go. Yeah. I haven't heard that expression in years, brother. You grew up on a farm, like a little bit. Cows and all that. All right. Let me move you on. All right, here's another then. The charm and the character of the wicked. The charm and the character of the wicked. I want to get to the last one, so that's why I'm pushing through a little bit. All right, allow me to walk you through this. What's the character of the wicked then? The first is this. He's naughty. Let me read it to you. A naughty, literally wicked, worthless person. A wicked, and this means morally bankrupt, walketh with a froward mouth. So two things you see there. The first is this. The character of a wicked man is he's naughty. It means he's worthless. Now, when I was growing up, I could identify, because my dad would point it out, with someone that was worthless. You know, I remember living out in the country, and hardworking people who didn't have a lot at least had a clean home, and their house wasn't fancy. This is old clapboard siding, but you went up to that house and you weren't appalled. But you could go right to the next door neighbor who was poor, and they're living like they're in a garbage dump. What was the difference? One had character, the other was naughty. And I ever wondered, if somebody watches this from back home, you know, so I had to be careful, but just, I can remember, just memories flood back to me when times were simple and characters were defined. Does that make sense? You knew who the good people were, and you knew who the worthless people were. And that's something you don't hear much today anymore. Let me walk you a little bit. So the character of a wicked individual, he's naughty. And then the second is he has a froward mouth. That is, he's known by what he says. I want to walk you through that. The word froward is, as you see on your outline, is deceitful, crooked, and perverted. That is, he's wicked in his speech. Here's another verse that goes with that. Oh, how did that get up there? Oh. I had to find somebody that was winking, so what can I say, all right? At least he's not sniffing a little girl's hair, all right? At least he's not doing that. All right, Proverbs 6 and verse 13. A little liberty in here that I don't take on Sunday mornings. All right, Proverbs 6 and verse 13. He winketh the wicked, naughty person, the worthless person, the deceitful, crooked, perverted mouthed person. He winketh with his eyes. He speaketh with his feet. He teacheth with his fingers. In other words, just follow him. Oh, you're going to get me in trouble. You can post that on Facebook. I don't have a Facebook, so go at it, brother. But the point is this. You can know whether somebody is sorry or not by watching them. You know, parents raising their children, teenagers and all, and you'll say to your children, I don't want you hanging around with the deacon's kids. Why? Don't ask me why. I'm just telling you, don't hang out with the deacon's kids. Normally it would be pastor's kids, but, you know, with the deacon's kids. Why? Because you know them by their behavior. I've said this before, and I'll keep moving with this. People who own pedigree dogs are more vigilant of their dogs than people are with their sons and daughters. You know that? Let your pedigree dog run around in the neighborhood. You're not going to be able to sell those puppies, not for the high dollar. And sadly, some people don't have as great a care for their sons and daughters. Moving on. He has a froward mouth. He also has a froward heart. Frowardness or perversity is in his heart. He deviseth mischief continually. He soweth discord. Now, you're going to pick that up again a little bit later. So what is in a man's heart? It does come out, right? It'll come out of his mouth. It'll come out of his actions. It'll come out of his attitudes. Whatever is in that heart, it is going to eventually be seen. I'm not going to park there because I want to finish up here. Frowardness is in. Sorry, I just did that. All right, now look at the culmination. What's the culmination or the end of a wicked, worthless person? Proverbs 6 and verse 15. Therefore shall his calamity, his ruin, his distress come suddenly. Suddenly shall he be broken without remedy. I want to define a little bit about the suddenness. The wicked come to a sudden, unexpected end. What are some of the wicked's calamities that just suddenly you hear it in the news or you hear it on the radio and it's like, oh my, they're only like 25 years old or they're 30 years old or they're 39 years old and they're dead. What in the world? You realize how often that happens to stars, Hollywood stars, athletes? I mean, it is constantly in the news about the calamity of the wicked. Some of the things, sudden sickness, disease, accident, death, abandonment, depression. You and I would be struck with horror how many of the public figures in our nation, our superstars, our athletes, our TV, our television star, our politician, how many of those are living on psychiatric or psychotic drugs just to function? I almost put a picture of Pelosi, but I didn't. All right, moving on. It's either alcohol, drugs, or it's both. That's all I'm saying. 7 abominations. Here we go. Let's walk through these, and then we'll call it a night here. All right. We're going to look at all of these. Proverbs 6:16. I want to read them. I don't know if they're all printed out or not there. These 6 things doth the Lord hate. 7 are an abomination unto him: a proud look, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that deviseth wicked imaginations, feet that be swift in running to mischief, a false witness that speaketh lies, and he that soweth discord among the brethren. All right, so we have 7 things that are an abomination. Now, I put on your outline a defining of what would be abominable, if you would, to the Lord, that we would immediately go to: worshiping idols or sacrificing children. Agree? Awful, abomination. These 7 things are abominations. They are gross wickedness in the eyes of God. Now let's walk it out. Here's the first then. The first is pride. Pride. A proud look. Let me define at least what a proud look might consist of. An attitude of superiority. One that looks down upon another. Haughty, lofty eyes. When I say the word proud, what's one of the first characters that come to your mind? Now, you got to go all the way back to the Old Testament. But when we say pride, who would we say is a central figure in pride? Who? Lucifer, right? I will be like, right? Isaiah 14, verse 13 and 14. Eve was tempted to take of the fruit, and ye shall what? Be as gods, all right? So, pride. Pride raises its ugly head. Now listen to this. One, when we want to be noticed, or we're jealous of others. Do you know that there are some people that demand the public light? They insist on it. And then when they can't have it, they are miserable souls. Pride. But then Matthew 5, verse 3, if we ever wanted to do a study back and forth, blessed are the poor in spirit. Wow. Just the opposite of pride, right? All right, moving on. Here's another. Not only a proud look. I keep having ring pop up on here. Yeah, hang on a second. Can't see what time it is because I'm keep looking at the ring. Stop you there for a moment. All right, go back to this. Okay, I have time. All right, lying. Let's walk this through. Proverbs 12:22. Lying lips are an abomination to the Lord, but they that deal truly are his delight. Now, here's two sides to that, right? On one hand, don't lie. On the other, do what? Tell the truth. Is it possible that you're not a liar, but that you just don't tell the truth? One of the things when people will say something to me, or somebody's asking you a question, and I have to pause, and I will sometimes say, "Do you want the honest truth? You want the truth?" People don't want the truth. You know how you know when people want the truth? When they're asking for it. Ask for the truth. But most people don't want the truth anymore. Let me walk you through a little bit of this. Psalm 51, verse 6, behold, thou desirest truth in the inward parts. Here's another. Ephesians 4:15, but speaking the truth in love. Ephesians 4:25, where we're putting away lying, speak every man truth with his neighbor, for we are members one of another. Do you desire truth? Or set you on somebody if you don't want it. You know? Do you want the truth? I think a lot of believers are sitting in churches that do not preach the truth, and they want it that way. Yeah, Rich. Oh, yeah. Or hope that whoever you're lying to doesn't remember the truth, right? I find it amazing. Here is what I see in American Christianity, is that people will tell a seed of truth and they'll wrap it in a lie. Just because somebody says something or they write something doesn't mean it's true. Right? And then I have a question for you. Why is it with some that you want to believe the bad before you believe the good? What is it about our nature that we always want to believe the worst thing instead of look for the righteous thing or the good thing? And some of us have a bent that we're always looking for the wrong. Don't we? All right, moving on. That felt good to get that out. I've been waiting several months to be able to just say that. So anyway, moving on. All right, here we go. Murder. Again, the third of the abominations, hands that shed innocent blood. Does God put a value on human life? Absolutely. Genesis 9:6, whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed, for in the image of God made he man. That's why the laws in America until the last half century were dealt strongly with the murderer and manslaughter. Just strong laws. I think the dealing with the sanctity of human life began to erode in 1973 with Roe v. Wade. And it's only a matter of time, given this culture, that euthanasia of the elderly is going to be at hand. Now, I know it already is being practiced some, but it's only a matter of time. At what point will our government determine whose life has value and whose life does not? I think we're there. I think we're there. Numbers 35:16, the murderers shall be put to death. That's a life for a life. Government has the right, government has the responsibility of capital punishment. The tragedy in America is when justice has not been done and there has been injustice. I don't know about you, but when I hear about men, it's usually men who have been on death row or they've been in prison for a life sentence for 20, 30 years and they were innocent. How do you pay that life back? You can't. But then do we throw out the whole judicial system because there was an error in judgment? You see, that's where our culture is. We've lost principle. We're no longer biblically, fundamentally based on absolutes anymore. Numbers 35:31, he shall surely be put to death. Add to that some statistics. I wish these were more recent, but it's hard to get these anymore. Number of abortions. This is 1996. All right, so I have to go that far back for some of these. This is from the Center for Bioethical Reform. Number of abortions per year in 1996 was 1.37 million babies aborted a year. Number of abortions per day, 3,700. Who's having abortions? 64.4% of all abortions are performed on never married women. Married women account for 18.4% 4% of all abortions, and divorced women obtain 9.4% of abortions. Why women have abortions: 1% of all abortions occur because of rape or incest. 6% of abortions occur because of potential health problems regarding either the mother or the child. 93% of all abortions occur for social reasons. The child's not wanted, or the child is viewed as inconvenient. Likelihood of abortion: an estimated 43% of all women will have at least one abortion by the time they are 45 years old. 47% of all abortions are performed on women who have had at least one previous abortion. Sad numbers, aren't they? Let's go on. The fourth thing that is an abomination to God is the heart that deviseth wicked imaginations. And I was reminded of this, if you have that. For out of the heart proceed evil thoughts, murderers, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false witnesses, and blasphemies. You realize that the wicked, some stay awake at night devising wickedness for the next day. It's their plot. It's their passion. It's where they find their satisfaction, if you would, out of the heart. Moving on. Wicked passions, feet that may be swift in running to mischief. I find it interesting, the descriptions here. The word mischief is not kids that are up to no good. Mischief is someone whose purpose and intent is to hurt and commit evil. There is, and I think it's a good thing as a believer, those of us who have known the Lord for many, many years, decades, there's a certain naivety that we have about humanity. Some who have been more recently saved and came out of the world, their eyes are wide open. They know the wickedness that's in the world. Some of you that work in public places, it would be very easy for someone like me to sit in my ivory palace, if you would, at the corner over here at the office, and lose insight into the fact that when you're out in the world, you are out in the world. And it is a place that can be very dangerous. A thought that goes with that. Isaiah 59 and verse 7, concerning the wicked. Their feet run to evil. They make haste to shed innocent blood. Their thoughts are thoughts of iniquity. Wasting and destruction are in their paths. If you wonder what's wrong with America, we've become a wicked nation. We're wicked. And then finally, well, two more actually, not finally. Perjury, false witness that speaketh lies. Do you ever watch politicians and you're thinking, I know you're lying, but it doesn't matter anymore because we're that culture. Do you remember back in, I think it was February, and the president, he shut down China and no more flights, and we're going to shut it down. And I remember all the media unloading on him. I remember Nancy Pelosi downtown in Chinatown in San Francisco. I remember de Blasio. He's down and he's telling the people, you need to come on back down. And now all of a sudden, we've forgotten that. And I heard Biden the other night said that Trump is a murderer. How did we get there? What about the ones that were downtown in San Francisco and Chinatown? How many of those died? We live in a culture that is full of liars. Republican, Democrat, it just doesn't. They're all liars. They just are. They're all liars. When the president is speaking, do you really believe everything he's saying? No. When Nancy Pelosi is speaking, do you believe anything she's saying? You know. Back in the back, Gene, and then up to Rich. The spin, all right. Well, Fox used to be called the nose spin or something like that. I think they're spinning it as fast as anybody else anymore, Rich. Oh, yeah. Along with how much in taxes? 40% or something crazy like that. Perils. All right, moving on. A divisive spirit. He that soweth discord among the brethren. Sowing discord is the nature of someone who is disgruntled, they're griping, they're complaining. Would you agree, and you can say yes or no, do you agree that at work there can be a divisive spirit? Yes. In school? Yes. In your family? Yes. In church? Yes. In a boardroom? Yes. In politics? Yes. Absolutely. Thoughts. Here we go. A froward man soweth strife, and a whisperer separateth chief friends. Now, I only have just a small group compared to the church here. I want to look you in the eye and say to you, if you ever hear somebody writing about me or talking about me, have enough character to come to me, and I will tell you the truth. Doc, right? I'll tell you the truth. I'll also tell you that the person who told you something is either lying or they're spinning it. I've been here 36 years, October the 1st. What do I have to lose at this point? Seriously? And then lastly, foolish and unlearned questions avoid, knowing that they do gender strifes. Foolish and unlearned questions, unlearned meaning ignorant questions, controversies, avoid, refuse, knowing they do gender strifes. You know, I've gone through about 4 months of people trying to create for me strife out of nothing. You've got an opinion, I got an opinion. I'm the pastor, you're not the pastor. And at the end of the day, the church is congregational. You know, that's the way it ought to be. But there's something wrong with the spirit of men or women, whether it's at work or it's at school or wherever it can be, when they are stirring up strife. For what end? For what purpose? Who do you want to hurt? Who do you want to destroy? I always ask, what is somebody's agenda? Because there's always an end goal. What is that goal? And is it a righteous one? And with that, I will close because it's choir time, right? Let's pray. Father, we thank you for the truth. We thank you for the balance that Scripture gives and brings to our life. Lord, we want to be passionate about truth, not passionate about ideas, passionate about opinions. Lord, we want the truth, and we want the Scripture to be preeminent, that Christ, the Word made flesh, will be glorified. Lord, bless as we go our way. I pray that we've learned and perhaps been encouraged to be careful. Be careful about our money. Be careful about our agreements with people. Be careful about the things that we say, knowing that a froward, wicked, worthless man is known by his heart and he's known by his mouth. Lord, that we'll also be careful about the things that you look upon with great disgust. May we be people who love life, love truth, love our brothers. Lord, may we be about that which honors and glorifies you, we pray in Christ's name. Amen.